To be able to trigger Power Automate flows from UiPath, we need a little setup here in Power Automate. Go click Create, choose an automated cloud flow, click Skip, and you will search for an HTTP request trigger up here. Choose the when an HTTP request is received. Here we will be getting a URL which we can use in UiPath to trigger the flow. First, we'll need some parameters. We'll need to define how the incoming data to this flow will look like. That is the data that we send from UiPath. Here we'll need a JSON schema, and we can just go click Use Sample Payload to generate schema. If you already have a schema for this or the JSON, then you can just paste it in here. Otherwise, let's go create a simple one. I will just have a file name key, and then I'll have a value. A JSON always start with curly brackets in the start and in the end, and then it will have key value pairs. I'll only be adding one here, but feel free to add several runs or even arrays. Now click Done. You can see that the schema is getting automatically created by Power Automate. Let's also send some data back to UiPath. So here you'll click New Step, and then you'll find a response. Choose the run under Requests and click it. We will just be sending a body back, and that body will also be in a JSON format. Go down here, have a curly bracket in the start and in the end. We don't need to define the schema here, and we can just have as many key value pairs as we want. It doesn't need to correspond to the JSON that we have incoming up here. But we will just have one key value pair here as well. And let us just call this log. And it will need to look like this. And here we will have our log. Here I'll say your file, and then I'll have the dynamic file name, which will be file name. I can say was processed. A very, very simple log message. Remember to have a quotation mark in the end. You can now click Save. And when this is saved, we can go up to when a HTTP request is received, copy this URL, and we can do it in UiPath from now on. Here you'll need to install a package. Go up to Manage Packages, click All Packages, then you will be searching for an WebAPI.Activities. Click Install and click Save. This will install the package that we're going to use. So now we have access to the HTTP request. So go search for that in Activity. I'll be dragging it in here. We'll need an endpoint, and this is the endpoint that we just had from Power Automate. So just press Ctrl V, a very long URL. You'll also need a method. So go pick a post. We are posting some data to the Power Automate. Now click OK. We'll need to change a few more things. The first thing is that we want to send some data to Power Automate. That one needs to be in a JSON format. So over here in Properties, in Body Format, change this application /XML to JSON. Now in the body, we will be creating the incoming data or the outgoing data of UiPath and the incoming data in Power Automate. So since it's a string, have a quotation mark in the start and in the end. Now we can create our JSON. This one will be a start curly bracket up here and an end curly bracket here. Now we will have our key value pair. Remember, we defined the schema there, so we can only have one key value pair now. The name will be file name. And here we need to, you can see here, when we just add one quotation mark, UiPath Studio will think that this is a string and a string. This is not allowed. So we need one more quotation mark to escape this one here. So when we're using quotation mark in a string, we'll put in another quotation mark to escape them. That means that we just treat them as the character itself. Then we'll have a colon, again, 2 quotation marks, and now we can have a value. Shouldn't we just say file example ABC, and then we'll have 2 quotation marks. So nothing fancy. We'll just test that the connection will work. Then I can click OK. If I go down here to output response content, I'll be creating a variable for the output that I'm getting. So press Ctrl K and let's give it a name. I'll say response content. I'll click enter. So now we can write out this response content in a right line. So drag in a right line, just write this one out. And we can try to run the flow to see that we have established the connection between UiPath and Power Automate. Go down to output, and here you can see that we get a JSON back. Log, your file example ABC was processed. And if I go over here, I can see in my 28-day run history that the flow has succeeded. Let's create a full solution that takes documents from UiPath that will be invoice files and process them in AI Builder, get the data back. The intuition will be the same. This will just be a little bit more advanced. No problem. We'll first have some data. I have a folder here with my invoices in. I have two subfolders. One is called a datum and the other one is called contoso. They are literally just the same. You can see that we have an invoice with some information in that I want out. For example, the date or the total or how much tax on it. So we'll have several things to do. The first one is to grab the files from this computer, and then we'll actually need in UiPath, we'll need to make sure that we move them to a OneDrive, SharePoint or Dropbox so Power Automate can read them, because we're not sending the actual files. We're just sending the file name so Power Automate can trigger them. That's the one thing, but that's very easy to do in UiPath. We will not do that now because we have it on my desktop and that desktop is placed on OneDrive. But that's just something you need to know. Then we go to UiPath. We'll first need a project path, and let me actually just grab the project path from here. So shift right click on the project, copy as path. In UiPath Studio, we will now use this path. So go find and assign, and up here we will be creating a variable for this. So press Ctrl K, and here I can say project path, and then I can click enter. In the value, I'll just be pressing Ctrl V. So now I have my path in a variable which I can use. Let's go do that right away. So find a for each, choose the one down here on the workflow control, drag it in right after the assign. So here I want to get all the file names out, and I can refer to each one of these file names while I iterate through them by this Q&A item, or I'll just be saying file name. This is just a matter of preference. I think file name describes better what we have here that we're iterating through. Then over here, I will be getting all these files. So press Control Space. This will activate the IntelliSense. Here you will write directory. Let me move the mouse a bit. I'll be saying get files, then in parentheses. Now I'll use my project path because I will be telling UiPath to go look there. So again, Control Space, project path. My search pattern after a comma, that will be quotation marks, then it will be an asterisk, dot asterisk like this. I want to look in all the subfolders. So again, Control Space, I will find the search options, then all directories. One thing that I will change is that the type argument needs to be a string out here. Let's first just try to write out these file names, and then we can talk about the challenge that we might face. So go find a right line and drag it in here. So here I'll just be writing out the file name like this. I want just to see the file names, so let's create, right click here and create a breakpoint so our flow will stop before this one here. Hit debug. Now we're just getting out the file names so we can work with them. If I just maximize it here we can see the file names. And to be used these in Power Automate, we need to do two things. First thing is that, as you know from Windows, you always have these backward slashes to separate each level of the hierarchy, like for example C:, then the backslash, then it will go down to users, then to Anders Jensen, then to OneDrive. In Power Automate, for some reason, those ones are forward slashes, so we need to do a replace. We will also need to navigate to the root of my cloud storage. In this case, it is OneDrive. So what I'll need to do is that I will need to remove all the C:, users all the way down to OneDrive Anders Jensen. So we'll do these two things, and then we can send the data to Power Automate. Let me just click stop here, and I can remove this breakpoint. Let me just maximize it. I can just right click, toggle breakpoint, toggle breakpoint. So now we will be doing an assign that will do the actual data gymnastics that will change the file name a bit. I think it's more easy to separate these, but we can of course do everything in the HTTP request if we want it. So I'll just be finding an assign and dragging it in here. Here I will say I want to work with the file name. I want to store it in the file name as well. I'm just going to change it a bit. Since this one will be a rather long expression, I'll go to the properties, and over here in the set value, I can now design it. So the first thing that I will do is to say, well, what do I actually want to do? I want to grab the file name first. Then I'll do a replace. Now I will be getting rid of the first part, so I'll have these parentheses. And in quotation mark, I will tell what do I need to get rid of. Here, well, it's the easiest thing would be to copy it down from the output. So let's click OK. Go to the output. Let's just take one of them, Control C. And here, I think I will be opening up a notepad, pasting it in here. Because what I want to get rid of is everything here. So copy that one all the way down to here. This desktop is actually a folder in my OneDrive. You don't have to place it on your desktop. It just needs to be in your OneDrive. And as I said, we could have UiPath copying these ones over while we process them, and then we can automatically delete them afterwards. But to make this one easy, we'll do it like this. So inside here, this is the thing that I'm going to replace. What do I need to replace it by? Well, I will replace them by nothing. So this will just be an empty string. That is fine. Then I also want to do another replace here. Here I want to say I want to replace the backward slash with a forward slash. That's because that's the way we use it in Power Automate. So it will be looking like this. So now we have the file name, we convert it here. And again, let me just have this breakpoint. I shouldn't have turned it off. It's just to stop it here. See that we actually can write out the file name in the format that we wanted. There you go. This is the way we want the file names to look at, so we can use them in Power Automate. Now we need to send this file name to Power Automate, and then we can process them over there. So what I will do now, I will be having this right click, toggle breakpoint, and toggle the breakpoint. We don't want to write this one out, so I'll delete this. Then we want to move the HTTP request in here and the response content, because we will do one HTTP request for each invoice. That will be for each file up here. And we will have one response back. So we'll need to change the body a bit, because now we want to give the file name to Power Automate so Power Automate can process it. Go down to HTTP request, go to properties. The first thing is that you'll need to think a little bit about the timeout. Right now it's 6 seconds. If we want to apply some AI on it, this takes more than 6 seconds, maybe 20. So we will need to take that into account. Here I will just be having a 100 second, that will be 100,000, but you can play a little bit around with this. This means that it will wait for a response for 100 seconds now. If it's faster, this will just resume and it will take the next file name. We'll also need to change the body a bit, because we will not be writing out this file example, but this is a hard-coded one, but we will actually be sending the actual file name to it. So what I want to do here is that I want to delete this file name. And let me just have it here. We'll need another quotation mark, because now we are having a variable in here. So I'll be saying plus, and then it was actually file name, and I'll have another plus. This is the way it will look. Now it will send this file name. This is the one from the assigned. It will send that to Power Automate. So if I click OK here, I have everything ready here. I can just click save. My UiPath flow is now ready. We'll need to fix Power Automate a bit. So I click Edit here. What I need to fix here is that I want to apply the components for the AI builder. So I received the file name here. Then I just need to get the file as content before I can use it in the AI builder components. So click this little plus here, add an action. So choose the get file metadata using path. So it's very important that it's this one down here in OneDrive for Business. The unique file name, well, we get that from up here. That will be the file name that we're actually getting. So if I click here, I can choose the file name and you can hover your mouse over. You could have written this as an expression, the trigger body file name. So we are getting the file metadata and then we can use it to get it. And so click the plus here, add an action. And here I will be saying get file content here in the OneDrive for Business. So the file, that is the output from up here. So if I click here, I need to have a ID, and this is the unique identifier of the file and folder. That is one is here. So now I can work with it and it's straightforward again. So just add another step, add the action here. Here I will have an extract information from invoices. You can choose any AI component, but since we have the invoice, we will be using it here. The invoice file, that is the output of this get file content. So that one will be here. Now we will be producing some output and we will use that in our response. So in the response here, we will change this a bit. We will be creating a much longer JSON with all the data. We just have 4 lines. So I can say vendor, and then here I'll choose the dynamic content. So if I go over here and I can search for it, you can see I can drag out a lot of things, but I'll just search for vendor. And here I will have the vendor name. That one is here. So then I'll have a comma. And then again, I will be having a date. So I'll be having a date. And that will be the invoice date as text, like this. Remember to have them comma separate. And since this, I'm not really sure how one, two spaces in, let us just do this as well here, just so they look like each other. You don't have to, but I like it. So then we also need the total tax, for example. And again, these ones are things that the AI builder will get out of our invoice. So I'll have the total tax as text, like here. And finally, let's just also have the total. So will not be the total. That will not be the total. That will be this total tax. So the invoice total as text. Now we have created our JSON here. I'll just be creating save, and we can try to run the actual flow from UiPath after we saved it. So if I click here, so here I'll just be writing out the response content for each one of these requests. That is fine. If we wanted to use it in UiPath, we could have done something in Excel or anything. So now it's running and it will take a little while, but I can go down to output here. Here you can see that we are actually running. Now our file is being processed in Power Automate, and the first result will probably be here. That is right here. So we have the vendor, we have a date, we have a total tax and a total. Now this flow will run. I will speed it up and then we will talk about the results while this is finished. There you go. And as you can see, this flow took a while. It took 4 minutes. That's because the AI engine needs to process our invoices. Now I can work with these JSONs here in UiPath, for example, with a deserialized JSON activity. The next advanced UiPath video is right up here for you.